The fifth season of the Canadian Premier League is upon us. A lot of excitement, a lot of anticipation. Where is the league headed? What is the state of the league? Well, who better to answer those questions than the commissioner himself, Mark Noonan, joining us here in our OneSoccer studio. It's great to have you in our studio.
It's awesome being here. First time at OneSoccer Studios. And,
yeah.
It's a great facility, and looking forward to talking about our upcoming season.
You got the nice tour. Now we're settled in. We're ready to go. And we have some questions because, as you know, we love the Canadian Premier League here at OneSoccer, following it, obviously, from day one. And I still feel like it's obviously in its infancy, just heading into its fifth year. But there's been so much progress as well. Yeah. What is the actual state of the league?
We feel really good about where we are. Just go back to the playoffs last year. The end of our fourth season, we really started to hit a stride. We had 15,000 people watching Forge and Ottawa in that final. The playoffs had good attendances, and we're looking to build on that momentum as we go forward. The teams have been really busy in the off season, and I'm excited to see what happens on the fields come Saturday.
What about interest? And it's kind of a two-part because you mentioned the attendance. So where have you seen the interest grow from fans? Where has it also grown from interest from sponsors?
Yeah, so from a fan perspective, we're building that. We're building a culture. We're building these mini communities in each one of the places that we play, and we're getting better at making those connections within the communities, and seeing players come up through League One into CPL and that pathway, and then beyond onto the national team. So excited about the pathways and the communities that we're creating, and that takes time, and it takes education, it takes generations actually to build it. I was in Spain a couple weeks ago meeting with our partner Atletico de Madrid, and I was jealous because they have 120 years of history, and we're entering our fifth season right now, and we have so much to learn from them, and it's just a fantastic partner. But I realize how young we are in the grand scheme of the equation here.
And that's it, right? Because a lot of these other leagues have been around forever that you sometimes forget the struggles they had to start a league. And with this being, just 5 years in existence, maybe what are some of the challenges? How creative do you have to get in marketing the league to get those new fans as well and get sponsors attracted to it?
Yeah, I mean, it's making sure we start with a credible product, right? And I think anybody who's watched our league realizes that 5 years in, we have a very, very credible product. It's watchable, it's entertainment. Each one of the games has got a really competitive aspect to it, and the partners are excited about what we're bringing, because from a partnership perspective, we bring local market, but also a national scale, particularly with our friends at OneSoccer and TELUS Broadcasting, and we've have a great roster of partners. You probably saw the TELUS announcement in the past week. They're going to be on the front of the Pacific jersey. We also announced Volkswagen, the renewal, and TonyBet is a new betting partner who's going to be the sponsor of our Game of the Week. So partners are seeing what CPL can do for their brands, and we're really grateful for their commitment to the game and the commitment to our fans and players.
A lot of movement as well in 5 years as you're trying to find the right formula. Let's talk about just teams a little bit here when it comes to that, because you've gained 2 new teams. Atletico Ottawa joined a few years ago. We're really excited to see the debut of Vancouver as well, and just that battle that's going on in the West Coast for territory over there. Yeah. Also lost a team, though, in Edmonton. What are some of the biggest challenges you also face?
Yeah, building leagues is hard. I was at MLS when I actually wrote a press release folding the entire league. We ended up folding 2 teams, Miami and Tampa. The league went from 12 teams down to 10 teams, 6 of which were owned by one guy, Phil Anschutz. So he owns 60% of the league, and that shows you how hard it is to build. Now look at MLS today, and they're light years ahead of that time. We're in that same development process, and as painful it was in Edmonton, we just didn't have the right conditions to be successful. And it's nice to be able to balance that off with Vancouver FC and the addition of that. And not only is it great to have a team in the Lower Mainland, the derby between Pacific, but you have 2 decorated former Canadian national team players in ownership and giving back to the game that gave them so much, and Rob Friend and Josh Simpson. And it's amazing having those guys sitting around our board table, because they bring that perspective, and they're putting their money where their mouths are. And having people like that committed is what's going to help grow this game. And I hope any of the current national team players watching, men or women, want to get involved, we'd love to have them involved. You mentioned Edmonton. One of my dreams is to have Alphonso Davies join a group and bring CPL back to Edmonton in a purpose-built building that community comes together with us in a public-private partnership.
Kind of touched on it there then, because it seems like there are a lot of avenues where you can go here to also help build the league. Where do you see some of the biggest opportunity? You
know, certainly the province of Quebec is a place that we need to have a team, and working very, very hard. Quebec City, Laval, I think are the obvious markets. The Greater Toronto area can certainly support more teams, the likes of Mississauga here, or Brampton, or Vaughan, or there's definitely more opportunity. But we need to get facilities built, and we need to have the right ownership groups. And without those two things, you know, we can't even then start talking about community involvement and municipality involvement. We need the right ownerships, the right stadium situations, and in order for us to be successful. Where is the league when it comes to expansion and infrastructure? Infrastructure in particular, new hire as well to help with that. So what can we expect as far as new teams? Are you also where you thought you would be? Yeah, so getting things built in Canada is harder, certainly harder than you see in the U.S., where municipalities are throwing monies at professional sports teams. Up here, it's much harder. It has to be far more thoughtful. And we needed an expertise in that area. And so you probably saw the announcement. We've hired a woman named Marnie Dicker, who's our Executive Vice President of Infrastructure and Chief Legal Officer. And Marnie is an infrastructure expert. She headed up infrastructure for the entire province of Ontario. So having her on board, helping our existing teams, whether that's being with York and the Woodbine opportunity, or the Wanderers up in Halifax, who are in the process of trying to get a new stadium in Halifax. It's the existing teams, but also working with our prospective markets on infrastructure plans and how that can work, and how we can get these cathedrals that we need in our sport to celebrate the game. And so having Marnie on board is just it's a huge hire for us. Really important. No pressure, Marnie, if you're watching, but we need to get these facilities built that celebrate the game. Provide an incredible professional opportunity for our players and a great atmosphere for our fans. The fans want to be close to the action, and they ideally would love a soccer-specific stadium. And she knows sports, that's for sure, right? Part of the Pan Am Games and building the infrastructure for that when that happened in Toronto in 2015. Yeah. Expansion, are there, I know you wanted to go into certain areas. Right. Have people expressed interest? Yeah. Where do you ideally also see the team, or the league, being in a few years with the amount of teams? Yeah, I think by the time 26 rolls around, I'd be disappointed if we don't have 12 teams playing. We've got a number of markets in play right now, whether that's Windsor, Kitchener-Waterloo, Kelowna. I've mentioned the province of Quebec, mentioned the Greater Toronto area. So there's a number of markets in play right now, but we're going to expand when we have the conditions that are necessary to be successful. And whether that's going back to Edmonton or these other markets I mentioned, without the right place to play, without the right ownership group, without the right community support, we're not going to do it. So yes, I'd like to have 12 teams by 2026. I think that's very realistic, but we're only going to expand when we're ready. During the pandemic, we had a little bit of good news where it was announced that Saskatchewan had been awarded rights to get a team. Obviously, there's still a facility that needs to be built there, and there were parameters that need to be put in place before that happens. Do we have an update on that? Update on Saskatchewan is that there's actually been positive progress at Prairieland, which would be the place where a stadium would be built. There's been some issues with the regional partnership group not getting along with each other, and that's something that we're not involved with between those two. So that's part of the equation. You have to have the stadium, but you also have to have the local ownership group. And until that gets sorted out, we're going to have we have to help sort that out. And we sort that out. There's a chance that Saskatoon comes online. I'm sure that will make that fan base very happy. Is there a message to the Eddies fan base who, that team has been around for so long. They were in existence for years, even before the formation of the Canadian Premier League. What can they expect in the near future? You know, it just, again, not to sound like a broken record, but it's the same thing. You need that municipality to step up and work with us on a proper place to showcase the game. And it's not just the proper place, but it's the economics and being able to schedule and things like suite sales and all those sort of things that add up into a sustainable business. And without the sustainable business, it's hard for us to commit to a market. So I'd say hang in there because we believe in the market. The market is not a problem. They're not the problem. We just need the right ownership as well as the right facility to play in.
How much has the Canada Soccer labor disputes with their national teams impacted the CPL?
It's good news and bad news, right? 5 years ago, nobody cared. And so the good news is that there's something to care about right now. The bad news is labor disputes are sometimes very difficult, very public, very emotional. And to be clear, we're not at all directly involved in this. The only thing that we've said is that we're the biggest cheerleaders for getting a deal done because soccer needs to compete against all the other sports out there. We need to compete against basketball and hockey and football and baseball and any other things people are doing with their free time. And if soccer is fighting amongst itself, it doesn't allow us to come together and then compete against everybody else. I think soccer can be the #1 sport in 10 years across every single metric if we get our house together and we're all aligned moving forward.
Grassroots level demographics say that that can be the case for soccer. We also know that the Canadian soccer business and that deal with Canada Soccer came under a lot of scrutiny. It's been mentioned by the players. It was talked about quite a bit during the Heritage Committee hearings. Why do you feel, though, that this is still a very important deal for soccer in this country?
Yeah, one of the things that somehow didn't get mentioned in these Heritage Committee meetings were the 500 jobs that CSB created. You think about in soccer, production jobs here. You think about a number of our former players that are now moving into roles after their careers are done. Jordan Wilson here, or Nick Ledgerwood in Cavalry, or Mason Trafford. All of these guys, Drew Becky in Ottawa is now in the front office. All of these guys are now having opportunity. You think about the referees that are going to the Women's World Cup this summer. You know, a number of them are getting games, including 2 females, in CPL games. So we're creating all this opportunity for the game. We are building stadiums. Obviously, there's no World Cup 2026 here without CPL and CSB. So, you know, the thing is that we're creating a soccer economy that provides jobs for players, provides jobs for administrators, provides jobs for referees, provides jobs for media people, and that's what's so exciting and why it's so important. You know, you talk about League One. We have 162 teams, I believe, in League One this year. 200 of League One's men's players have gone on to play professionally, and 150 of the women's players have gone on to play professionally, and obviously for our national teams here in Canada. You know, that happens because CSB exists, and you know it's a combination of creating jobs and creating opportunities and creating that pathway is why CSB is so important.
Also, it seems there's some exploration as well in Atlantic Canada when it comes to League One, and you mentioned it, the semi-professional league. There's League One Ontario, BC, Quebec. How important would it be to also expand that league for the men, but also the women, right? That seems to be the big topic, is investing in the women's game.
100%. You know, League One caters to both men and women, and we want that league to be national. So it's prairies, it's maritime. You know, it's creating a complete national Division III league, and Dino Rossi and his team are doing an amazing job. Matt Braithwaite doing an amazing job with all the clubs that make up League One to continue making that an important part of the ecosystem.
And we know the biggest part of the ecosystem as well are the players themselves. Where would you put the development of the relationship between the CPL and the players? Where is that right now, that relationship? Yeah,
I think it's been pretty public that the players have now unionized, and we voluntarily recognize them, understand it's important for the players to have a union, and the next step is to collectively bargain with the players and the representatives. So that's where it sits. We look forward to that, and making sure that we have players that are being treated fairly and helping us grow the game, because people don't care about leagues. They care about players. They care about clubs. They care about their communities, and so we need to make sure we've got a productive relationship with our labor.
And, even when it comes to Canada Soccer, even the CPL players, the words we keep hearing from those players, transparency, communication. How open is that communication as well with the CPL and the players when it comes to, because I know you were very open last year when you talked about finances and raising the floor and raising as well the cap and how the structure was working financially. So how open are you with that communication when it comes to the finances of the league and what can be provided to players?
Yeah, I'm not going to get into the discussions here as we haven't started them, so it's really too premature to talk about that at this stage. I think it's clear we've stated that our owners and investors have invested well over $100 million into the sport with zero return, and that that investment is going to continue for the foreseeable future, so that number will grow. But by the same token, we proactively raise the minimums and the cap from a player perspective, because we need to make sure that we are treating our players fairly and making this a destination for players to build their careers.
And it usually starts at a young age, and we know that there are rules in place with the CPL because development is huge when it comes to under 21 players, and we know that John Herdman most recently, before their last camp, had come out and said that he'd like to see more under 21 players getting playing time in the CPL. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, it's a balance, because you want to put a great product on the field, and sometimes those players are more development in nature, and when coaches have to put a winning product on there's a lot of pressure on them to produce. So it is a delicate balance, but I'm incredibly excited about the new hire we're making in the sporting group, where Kostov Smirnotis from Forge is going to be our executive vice president of football or soccer. I use them interchangeably, but arguably one of the most successful builders of soccer in this country, whether it's through Sigma, the youth club, or obviously Forge winning 3 out of 4 championships. We now have a guy at the league office who's going to have a much bigger canvas and work very closely with me and our other clubs and our ownership group to really map out what is the best way for us to build our product on the field.
When you map things out, and this is a challenge of every league because there are so many tournaments as well that happen in the game of soccer, football. By the way, both terms appropriate. I know a lot of people always get on North America for that.
That's all right.
Even though the term soccer was invented in the UK. I digress here, Mark. But when it comes to mapping things out, the challenge you also face is when your teams are successful and now they're qualifying to compete in Champions League, and you're going to have 2 teams there.
Sure.
How do you accommodate that? I mean, let's look at it maybe glass half full first. How excited are you to have multiple teams in Champions League? It's
amazing. It's amazing. And it's going to give us a measuring stick for our league when we go and play against the best clubs in the region. And it's going to make us up our game, because nothing is better than competition to make you up your game and see where you measure. And for a team that's going into its 5th season, to have that measuring stick is huge, and we're going to have to make some accommodations for those teams to ensure that we are competitive with leagues that have been around for 20, 30, 40, 100 years, and that's going to be a great challenge for Costa and his team, and a great challenge for our ownership group. But we're the nice thing about being a young league is that we aren't stuck. We can make changes. You saw that our playoff format's got a brand new look at our playoff format, and so we're going to continue to work as a league to evolve and develop and create a really differentiated product on the field.
Scheduling the calendar, is that part of helping maybe the teams who qualify for those tournaments?
Yeah, I mean, we're going to have to look at what the schedule is when it gets announced, but then we're going to have to address it. And I wouldn't be surprised if that there's some earlier games that we're going to they're going to have to play in the CONCACAF Champions League because the calendar is so crowded. But a lot of that we don't control, and so we've just got to work with our partners at CONCACAF and to sort out what is the best formula going forward.
How important is it to, at least in the beginning, keep tinkering with rules? I mean, this year we're going to see for the first time a different kind of playoff format to try and get that right formula, to try and not just engage the players, but obviously engage the fans. Can we expect more of that?
Yeah, we're a young league, and we should be willing to try some things that perhaps some of the more traditional leagues aren't able to do because they've got all these years and years of history. So you mentioned the playoff format. You mentioned talk about the roster sizes and the makeup of our rosters, the length of our schedule, playing different tournaments. We're gonna look at everything, and we can't be afraid to experiment. And if it doesn't work, you can always go back to what it was. But if you don't try things, you'll never know. And so we're gonna be a league that smartly tries some things and look to improve our product as well as our fan experience.
Do you envision maybe down the road things that you experiment with or try with that maybe like MLS would suddenly adopt? Or do you see yourself as being maybe a league where those types of things can happen and be a measuring stick for other leagues?
Yeah, there's no doubt that the young leagues are where things get tried, and when they work, then they get expanded into the more mature leagues. And so we're happy in the right circumstances to play a little bit of a guinea pig and be on the leading edge of things that are going to improve the game.
On the flip side, I'll poke a little bit too when it comes to money because I just like talking money. MLS, obviously, we know when it comes to their salary cap, they've made some diversions to allow DP, designated player, and I know that the finances are completely different. I'm not trying to compare the two leagues, but have you thought of exploring something that would allow the CPL to bring in a somewhat bigger name to, again, attract fans?
Yeah, we're going to explore anything and everything that helps us improve our product, because at the end of the day, you can't fake that. Your product is something that you can't fake. So whether that's a modified designated player rule, an adjustment to get more young players in the league, we're not going to be afraid to look at every single opportunity to improve our product. And I don't have all the answers for you right now, but that's why we brought in a guy like Costa, who is, a proven builder of things in this game, and working with him and our other partners, we're gonna continue to evolve this league.
I know the work continues for you in the off season, and now that the opening weekend is upon us, year 5, you have a new playoff system, you have a new team in Vancouver. Just emotionally, how excited are you to kick things off?
Well, it's my first full season, so I'm personally incredibly excited. But I feel it walking around the offices. You have people that work and dedicate their lives to building this game, and people in your office, I can kind of feel it even here, that we have a product that is Canadian, that's producing. You think about the league is going into its 5th season, and you've got Lucas McNaughton and Joel Waterman and Dominic Sator and all these guys. We had 5 different guys who have made their way to the Canadian national team using CPL as a platform, and that has to continue, and it's only going to continue as our pipeline gets bigger, from League One through CPL up until the national team. And I suspect in the next decade we'll have 16 to 20 teams across the country, and might even have a Division II and think about promotion and relegation in time. But first, we've got to get our Division I really up and running.
John Herdman once told us as well that he was able to scout some of the players because he could watch them on OneSoccer. How important is that partnership and that visibility? No,
it's critical, because it's funny. I'm a huge Arsenal fan. Most people know, but it's not mutually exclusive. I also want to be able to go in my backyard and watch my local product. And as our local product gets more and more entertaining, and you see players go off to other parts of the world or into the national team, it just makes you so proud to have a Canadian Premier League with mostly Canadian players coming from communities that we can go and watch, and tuning into OneSoccer and the likes of TELUS and I think shortly even broader universe is what helps build a sport. And we're grateful for the OneSoccer partnership and with the likes of TELUS, who are joining us not just as a distribution outlet but also as a partner and a sponsor. And it's those type of commitments that are going to help us grow a world-class league.
We've been waiting a while. We're excited for it, and it kicks off with a triple header. We'll be busy here, but it's the kind of busy we like, and we really appreciate you taking the time to stop by the OneSoccer studio.
Thanks, Andi.